Good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, David. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. You made me look important on that introduction there. Thanks a lot.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was a lot of fun to put together.
Yeah, sure.
Today we're going to be discussing LD 116. That is an act relating to antlerless deer harvest.
Yes, correct.
And LD 1663, which is an act to improve boater safety on Maine waters.
Sure. I think we're going to get to the boating one second, only because it's more controversial at the moment. But the antlerless deer restructuring bill, which is LD 116, probably I know has far more significance long term for the people that listen to, or I guess our friends on the Whitetail Deer Facebook page and our SAM members. As you remember, last year we worked on legislation to appropriate $40 million for the Land for Maine's Future program, of which a portion would be used to buy deer yards. That triggered, over the next 4 years, another at least 2, probably 3-to-1 match. Well, there, we had another introduction. That must be Bob joining us.
So, sorry about that, David. I hit the wrong button. I was trying to get back to the comments.
Okay. So that legislation passed, and we bought our first deer yard, 1,000-acre piece up in Aroostook County. Well, I realized that although it's important to begin buying deer yards, and that money was important, it's not going to be enough to get the job done in an amount of time that we need to save the deer herd in northern, eastern, western Maine. So right now I'm announcing the passage, or out of committee unanimously, of LD 116 and why it's significant to those who care about deer. When I was approached, well, I actually wasn't approached. I approached the administration, the commissioner, and said, we need to do something about our doe permit system. It's a mess. Our antlerless permit system is just a mess. And they agreed, and I testified repeatedly at the committee that we needed to restructure that whole system. So in a nutshell, what will happen is from now on, you can actually harvest 2 deer. You can get your buck just like you always have, and that's what I do. I only shoot bucks. That's my personal choice. If I want to apply for a doe permit, I can, or an antlerless deer permit, I can. In the future, what will happen, instead of all these bonus permits and sort of the confusion, is you still can get your buck just like you always have. But if you want an additional deer, you can apply for a doe permit. So under the new system, you can harvest 2 deer if you get chosen for a doe permit. So you get to shoot your buck and your doe. The additional deer will be a $12 charge. Why this is important and a significant piece for those who care about restoring deer is my deer biologist, Jerry Levine, and myself, we helped design this new system along with the department. But I only would participate if the money generated under this new system went into the deer management account. And I made that clear to the committee and everyone involved that we wanted that money that was paid by sportsmen for these extra permits to go into that fund. In committee, I made a last-minute plea to do that, and the committee agreed. Why that's important is, in addition to the LMF money, the $750,000 that's generated by that $12 fee, that's an estimate by the fiscal office. Now that goes into that general deer management account, it gets matched 3-to-1 by federal money. That money in that account then becomes $3 million a year to buy and manage deer wintering areas. That is likely more than the LMF money per year. So now you've got the Land for Maine's Future program and this new antlerless deer money that's eligible to purchase and manage deer wintering areas. That is very significant. It now means that the department has all the resources they need to go out and buy and manage the deer yards. So I'm not done there either. I also approached the administration about restructuring the way that we mitigate large energy projects. And although I really have no announcement yet, I've had great discussions about a third revenue stream that may be available in the future for habitat restoration connected to those large energy projects. That's exciting for several reasons. I want to get into a couple. When you as a sportsman buy a firearm, ammunition, or outdoor gear related to hunting and fishing, some money goes into a special tax for fishing, but what's called Pittman-Robertson excise tax goes into the federal government, paid for by Maine sportsmen, and it gets redistributed back to the states. Now that we've made this change and the antlerless deer permit money is available, instead of buying wetlands for another purpose or other wildlife management areas, that Pittman-Robertson money will be redirected to buy deer wintering areas. That's huge. Now, the second component of this that's exciting, and it's an issue that I think many sportsmen and sportswomen care about, is inland fisheries and wildlife has a constitutional protection over its fees that it generates from sportsmen and women. The $12, because it was under Title 12, which is inland fisheries and wildlife, is now protected constitutionally and can't be swept by the legislature. All of that money goes in the account. Yes, an administration can say, we don't want you to buy land right now. That can still happen, but they can't take the money. So that money is now protected. That's a big deal. Because even if you had an administration that said, I don't want to buy any more land, that can only happen for 4 years. And if they do that, we as voters can go back in and if we don't like it, we can hold them accountable after their governorship is up. Yep. So that's a big deal. We got a new pot of money of $3 million a year as long as this passes the legislature. It's constitutionally protected, and now we can double, if not triple, our efforts to buy deer wintering areas. We do have another cycle in which deer wintering areas will be purchased in April. And I will say right now that I'm confident that a couple more projects will come forward in April. And then later in the fall, there'll be another round. So we have two more bites at this apple before the next election cycle. So that's all pretty exciting news. And with that, I'll take any questions, and then we can get into the other voter bill.
We have a question. What about super PAC license holders?
The department will still manage the super PAC license holders just like they have in the past. You'll still get your permit. What'll be interesting is the leftover permits now can be bought over the counter. So a person can, if there's extra permits in a district, can come in and buy one if they've harvested their deer and they want to buy another one, they can come in and buy another one. Other states do that. It's similar to the way deer are managed elsewhere, but it allows all those extra permits to be sold and really focuses harvest effort where it needs to be. Somebody who really wants to go out and harvest another animal, not just build up extra bonus permits.
Right. Now, when you talk about the over-the-counter permits, correct me if I'm wrong, but the process for this is that you buy a permit, you harvest your deer, and then you can buy another permit.
Yeah, we're going to wait for the details on that. There's going to be some rulemaking and final details, but that's the way I understood it, and I listened to the committee. I think that's the way they intend to do it. Is they're trying to target folks that are going to harvest an animal, and we don't want people coming in and just buying up a half dozen permits and then not allowing somebody else to have a chance.
Right. Another question: is the first doe permit free?
No. You're actually going to be able to shoot 2 deer. Okay, so whether that you buy or apply for a doe permit or not, the application fee is free. So you can always shoot your buck. If you want to get a second deer, you apply for the permit. If you get chosen, then you can purchase your permit. Or for those that think, well, I don't want to pay unless I get a deer or get a buck or whatever, you'll still have the option to buy one over the counter. So technically, you could shoot 3, 4, or 5 deer, just like you could with the other system. You're just going to pay the $12. And remember, those $12 are going to return your excise taxes as a sportsman that you paid the federal government to put back into deer management and buying deer wintering areas. So as sportsmen, we've multiplied our buying power fourfold. One stateside dollar when you buy a permit versus 3 more from the federal government. So we've multiplied our money times 4. That's very significant if you care about deer.
Absolutely is. Now, I understand there's also there's a predator control component to this
Yes.
in these
Yes.
areas.
Sure, I'll get into that. When I was a legislator, I created this fund, and I, at the time, wanted some money to go in there. So we created a voluntary checkoff to put money in it, but also targeted $2 of your tagging fee that you pay when you tag your animal. $1 to go in this fund for predator control, and another $1 to go in for habitat. So as long as we're tagging animals, that money will go in for predator control. And this is very important because we don't have to ask the legislature in the appropriations process for the money to manage predators. That is where the antis have their power. They go in and they squeeze these folks that don't understand deer management or how that system works or predation. And they use emotion to stop the legislature, some in the legislature, from supporting predator control. We are bypassing that process by putting our fee directly into that account. So although, you never want to pay, well, we have been paying the fee for quite a while now, we are avoiding a real fight with the antis by doing it this way. We're paying our own way. And unfortunately, it's always painful to have to pay fees. But what I tell people when they say, well, I don't want to pay the extra buck or the extra $12, is who's going to look out for us if we don't do it ourselves? What I found is the general public just is kind of neutral. They don't care. They don't want to put up money for predator control or for deer habitat. We either do this ourselves or we continue to watch the decline.
Yep.
I've been doing this for a long time, and I wish there was another way, but like usual, sportsmen and women have to take control of this situation and conserve the wildlife because others don't seem to want to pay for it.
Yep. And well, when you think about that $12 fee, that's for an additional deer.
It is. It's for the additional deer, but it's triggering 3 more federal dollars going into what we all want, which is a healthy and vibrant deer population statewide.
Yep.
That money would go elsewhere if we didn't do this.
Yep. When we started with this and we started doing these lives, we talked about LD 404 being, a generational fix that, maybe you or I may not see the benefit, but with this new LD 116, there's a potential that we're gonna reap a benefit from this.
We're gonna, I would guess, at least double, if not triple, the amount of money that we're going to invest. And what that will do is it'll shorten the window of time in which we can secure enough deer wintering area on the landscape to make a difference. You're talking about millions of acres of land. There's only 3% of the landscape now in deer wintering area. We need to raise that to probably 12%. So it's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of resources. But we just made it 4 rungs up the ladder when we did this. Now we have 2 pots of money, and I'm working on a third. Between those 3 pots of money and smart investments in deer wintering area and other wildlife habitat, because along with the deer wintering area comes habitat for all the other animals that depend on that same type of landscape um, older growth forest. So that's incredibly important. You've got everything from owls to hawks to eagles, uh, bobcats, you name it, that depend on that similar wintering habitat. So you get that extra bonus. But really, this is a big deal because I believe there was going to be a restructuring of that system anyway. What we did was we were able to put our resources together to channel that money into bringing deer back and investing in the things that sportsmen care about.
Yep. In my mind, and it's an absolute win, and it'd be hard pressed to find anything that you can take a negative from.
That's right. So real quick, and we can get on to any more questions that you have. We're able to do these things at the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine because we have a strong membership. I encourage anyone listening, if they care and they recognize how significant these policies are and how much influence we have, consider joining. We need people, we need numbers, because that's where we generate our power. So I had to throw that pitch in there. So you can join at the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine.org.
Yep, absolutely.
Or samofmaine.org. What's
yep.
that? Yep.
I just put at the bottom of the screen, find the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and at samofmaine.org. And absolutely, it's membership that drives everything that you do. And, the benefits of being a member of SAM are numerous.
Yeah, thank you. So do you have any questions before I move on to the boating bill, mandatory boater education bill?
That was the last question for LD 116.
Okay, great. So I want to move into this mandatory boater education bill. So, I've seen a lot in my time, and God, it's almost 11 years as a SAM director and lobbyist, and then another 12 in the legislature. But I've never seen the the people's public hearing process so disrespected. Because of COVID and this void of our ability to go in and participate in the committee, which has been changed recently, I guess going forward, we now have the option to go in, but most of the committees have done their work, so it doesn't really matter. But these committees are disregarding the 2-week period to post bills. COVID has allowed them to use this excuse that, well, we can't meet in person, so we're not even going to bother to have the 2-week waiting period. They're scheduling and sometimes not even posting bills that they're holding public hearings on. They'll take a bill from last year, although it may be related, be completely different than the bill that they're talking about this year, and not even bother to post the new bill. They are posting a bill for public hearing and then minutes later having a work session on the bill without any public participation. The only people participating are the department personnel, who are usually at least in some areas, in conflict with groups like ours. And that's exactly what happened with this boating education bill. It was introduced in last session. It was rushed. Really, the original bill, I believe it was posted and then had a work session 12 minutes later. So you had a public hearing and then a work session with nobody knowing even what was going on. That happened last year. Well, they ran out of time with this bill. It's been in front of the legislature many times, and it hasn't passed. I know I was on the committee for 6 different terms, and it always comes up. It's a perennial bill. Well, this time around, they got a little clever. They held the bill over from last year. They were supposed to do a stakeholders group and come back with a bill that had been worked by the department. Well, they came back with a bill, but nobody worked with the department. A completely different bill. They eliminated many of the exemptions that were in there and then replaced them with new exemptions, all language that had been crafted by the department. So, lo and behold, this year they had a work session. Previous to that, I had indicated, what the heck's going on? Other groups like the Maine Marine Trades Association said, what's going on? We didn't hear anything. And all of a sudden they showed up in the committee with a bill, completely reworked. What I think really set off a lot of people, including myself, was the amendment said it was a result of a stakeholders group that had met. It was their recommendations. There was no stakeholders group. So I reached out to the commissioner and said, is there going to be a public hearing on this bill? I was in hopes that it was going to. I don't know what happened, but there was no public hearing. The committee went into work session, worked the bill, and voted unanimously to support the amended version. There's been about 4 different versions of this bill, so I'm not really 100% sure where we are and who's exempt. But the bill that they passed unanimously had a 25 horsepower exemption. So if you had a boat with a motor 25 horsepower or less, you were exempt. It also exempted, I think, marine. My objection to this is, all the exemptions in the world is great, but why in the world is this bill getting a unanimous committee report without any, virtually zero public input? Extremely controversial bill. There should have been a public hearing. There should have been a stakeholders group, and there wasn't. So we're encouraging people to reach out to their legislator and ask them to vote no. We asked them to create a stakeholders group through a resolve, carry the bill over till next year, and allow groups to come in and participate in the process. There are over 40 states that have some sort of voter education. Nearly all of them are different, and they tailor their voter education program to their state. Because we have salt water and fresh water, because we have an older population, our voter education bill should be tailored to Maine, not drafted by unelected members of even, and I have a great relationship with Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, but that is a cooperative, collaborative process that's supposed to occur with the public participation, and it did not. There is no decent argument that can be made by that agency or the committee that this was good public process. So for us, when we weighed whether we would participate, my board and I feel like because that process was so poor, that we cannot add our name to this bill in any way. We cannot negotiate a compromise, and we will not, because the process was flawed. It's like building a foundation on a home on only 2 walls. Eventually, it's going to collapse. And in our opinion, this is a faulty foundation this bill is built on, and we just can't support it. If they do the resolve, we will support that. Representative Fay, Jessica Fay, offered, and I sent the letter to you and you posted it, that she's now going to try to amend it to have a born after date of 2002 with an effective date of 2024. That means that anyone age 22 will have to take the course, 22 and younger. That's a new proposal that hasn't even been voted on yet. But what it shows is how faulty this process has been. They had a unanimous committee report. It couldn't defend it. Now they're trying to amend it and then pass this new amendment and then have a stakeholders group brought in after the fact to renegotiate. Okay, I don't know how people negotiate in the real world, but you don't pass the bill and then put a stakeholders group together to put the bill together. They're trying to take advantage of this opportunity to pass something, get it in place, and then a stakeholders group will be irrelevant. I don't know about your folks, whether you support voter education or not. Nobody can defend that process. So either they fix it or we're going to go out and aggressively try to kill this bill altogether.
Yep.
We just will not participate. And why this is so important, we all celebrate our freedoms. The freedom to navigate on the waters of Maine has been reinforced by the courts over and over again as a right. You have a right to get in a boat just like you have a right to walk in the woods. And the courts have said, for the purposes of fishing and fowl and navigation, you have a right to be on the water. Yes, you can have an education class that's passed by the legislature, but you can't take that right away without due process. And in this case, this course, this education class, I asked specifically, how long is it And how much money? The course is on average 6.5 hours, according to the company that does the class. 6.5 hour class, $35 fee, and at the end of it, you have to pass a test. Now, this is where those constitutionally minded people get it. If you have a test in which the government can take a right away, imagine if somebody put in a law that says you have to take an education class to own a firearm. If you do not pass that firearm class, you can't own firearms. The uproar would be deafening. People would be on the streets protesting. This is no different. It creates a precedent by which the government can take away your right to navigate, to fish and to fowl, because you couldn't pass an online course supplied by the government. It is a very slippery slope. I have stressed my concerns to Dan Scott, the colonel, around this. Whatever we do, if the public doesn't understand it, and then that they learn that their rights were taken away without them being able to weigh in, we will be back repealing this bill next year. So that's where we are on this bill. Jessica Fay, Representative Fay, is a nice lady. She means well. I believe some people in the department meant really well. Their intentions were good, but they got this one wrong. And the only way to fix it is to start over again. So with that, if you have any questions, Daniel, I'll take them now.
I do not on this particular one, but I actually, I want to talk to you about, you sent me an email, and we'll post a link to the email that you sent me about the timeline of this process.
Yes, that timeline, Stacy Kiefer from Marine Trades Association put that timeline together. They're equally upset with this. Even though the Marine folks are exempted, they feel like we do, that the process was so horrible that we need to start over again. They support some sort of education. I think anyone that has navigated on salt water realizes the dangers of being on the water. A lot of people who are on the water have licenses. They're in a commercial trade. They're lobstermen, they're fishermen, clam diggers. They can navigate, but we also realize how dangerous it is. I personally have been on the Madomic River, striper fishing at the end of the river when the fog comes in. My boat is not fast enough to beat the fog. If you don't know how to navigate the channels, the currents, with a compass, you're in trouble. So we all realize that those types of skills are important to learn, and so do they. But again, they have also said that they have serious concerns with what's happened. So I don't know, to be honest with you, what's going to happen. This thing's a mess. But our two organizations, SAM-ILA, and the Marine Trades Association, are going to continue to push for this resolve and do a real stakeholders group. That timeline is appalling. And then when you post it, take a look at it. Literally minutes from when they post a bill. One of the public hearings was, the bill was posted the night before, and then 12 hours later they had a public hearing on it. Less than 24 hours, they posted a bill, had a public hearing, and then expected to defend that with the public. Unless I was up at 10 o'clock at night reviewing the bills, which you have to go over for all the committees, and literally 100 bills or more, I would have had to be working at 9 o'clock at night to have picked up on that bill, and then the next morning been ready with written testimony on that bill. That is horrible. Again, I probably used that word a half a dozen times. That is horrible process. It's indefensible.
Well, I think I used the comment that it was awfully rushed.
Yes, horribly. I wish I could say that this was an anomaly. It is not. I talked to Craig Poulin, retired colonel of the state police. He also monitors bills and lobbies, and he said similar things have been happening in other committees. They're just disregarding the public hearing process. Well, what's going to happen is a year or two from now, people are going to find out what happened, and they're not going to be happy. but the very people that put these bills in will be gone. Some will have been termed out. Some will have lost their elections. There's nobody to hold accountable when people find out.
Yep.
Government in the dark is the worst form of government. It's not government. And that's where we are. This bill tested my patience level. I've seen enough of it, and we're not going to participate in this process any longer.
Peter Poor asked if you have passed a commercial motorboat operator license, will that be acceptable? These have been discontinued as of the last year.
I'm not sure of that because things change so quickly.
Yep.
There's been 3 or 4 different versions of this, including exemptions for guides with licenses like that. I think the commercial saltwater people, the Marine Trades Association brought up the same concern, is they have no idea who's exempted, who's not, because they haven't done the due diligence of spelling that all out. So I can't really answer that question. Right now, it looks like, in having been part of the committee process, the committee's all over the place now. They're split. Some want to do the resolve we asked for. Some, like Representative Danny Martin, questioned why at the last minute our organization was objecting. They didn't call us by name. He didn't call us by name, but I knew who he was talking about.
Yep.
I'm not going to shy away from objecting to this process, whether it's Danny Martin or anybody else. The only accountability that we have is when the voters don't like what just happened. And Danny Martin is turned out. He's not up for re-election. I get that. But Danny Martin was Commissioner of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. He knows the process. You're going to post that timeline. If Danny Martin, Representative Martin, wants to come on and defend that timeline, he's a ex-commissioner and a committee member. He should do that. And I'll debate him all day long that was bad process and never should have happened.
Well, just so everybody knows, we'll get that timeline posted up, but it was less than a week.
Yes, that's right. The committee members take a great deal of pride in the work that they do, and they should. But I think every one of those committee members know that this isn't the way it works. I have no issues with anybody at Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. I respect and like a lot of them, consider them friends. Many of the committee members were endorsed by our organization. I have great relationships with them. This is not a personal battle with any of them or with the administration, at Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Whether you like it or not, sometimes you have to tear down the home, rebuild the foundation, and start over again. And in this case, I don't think they've gotten there yet, but they will realize that when the public finds out what's going on, they're going to hear it, and they're going to hear it loud. And they're forcing me this isn't me going after the committee or the department. I am being forced as the leader of the largest sportsman's group, probably in New England, to do this. I don't want to, but I will. I have to, because the people that I represent are going to want to know this. And it's the same reason that we will not put our name on it.
And that's why we're bringing this information to you, because we want to make sure that this information comes out to you as we have it, as we get it to you as quick as possible. That way you can contact your legislators, let them know either your pleasure or displeasure. In the comments, we have find your senator, find your representative. We have the links right there. All you need to do is click those links, and you just follow the prompts to locate your representative in your area. Email them, call them, do what you have to do. Voice your pleasure or displeasure.
Well, with that, if there's no more questions, Daniel, then I think we've delivered the message.
Absolutely.
I would just say one last time that this is not personal. It's not personal to Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and it's not personal to the committee members. We know what's going on in other committees, and it's the process that some have been following, but enough is enough. We should never give up our rights without a fight. And in this case, it's possible that we could very well do that, and nobody knows it. And with that, thank you, Daniel, for putting this on. Let's hope folks reach out, ask for the resolve, putting a stakeholders group together on this bill. Let us do our work. We are accountable to our members and to the community. But at the end of the day, if we have a law like this, we need to be able to defend it. And right now we cannot. So with that, thank
Absolutely.
you. And
David, thank
yeah.
you so much.
All right.
And until next time, this has been SAM-ILA Legislative Update, and we're going to try to bring you these on a regular basis.
All right. Thank you, Daniel.
Have a great day, everybody.